After that dinner, the house felt different. Not peaceful. Not normal. Just tense. My sister barely spoke to anyone for the rest of the night. She finished her food quickly and went upstairs without saying a word. But before she left the table, she looked at me. Not. After that dinner, the house became quiet in a way I had never felt before. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of silence that presses on your chest. My parents barely spoke to me. My mother avoided eye contact. My father suddenly found reasons to leave the room whenever I walked in. But my sister? She acted like nothing had happened. The next morning she sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee. Scrolling through her phone like the night before was just another casual conversation. When I walked in, she didn't even apologize. She just looked up and said, "You should have told them earlier. Secrets always come out." I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. She smiled a little when I said that. For a few seconds, I just stared at the message on her phone. My heart was beating so loudly it felt like the entire house could hear it. The words on the screen didn't change. They stayed there, glowing quietly in the dark living room. Did your family believe the story about your sister? Story. Not truth. Not secret. Story. My fingers slowly picked up the phone. I told myself I was only going to check that one message. Just enough to understand what was happening. Nothing more. But when I unlocked the screen, the conversation opened automatically. And that's when everything started falling apart. The messages weren't from just one person. There were dozens. Different names. I stood there in the living room holding my sister's phone, reading the messages again and again. The words didn't change. Once your sister loses their trust, the inheritance situation becomes much easier. For the first time that night, I felt something strange. Not sadness. Not anger. Clarity. Everything suddenly made sense. The fake concern. The sudden accusations at dinner. The way she revealed my secret like it was a performance. It was never about honesty. It was strategy. I slowly locked her phone and placed it back on the table exactly where it was. My hands were shaking, but my mind was calmer than it had been all night. Because now I knew something she didn't. She thought I was the weak one in this. For the next few days, I played the role my sister wanted me to play. The quiet daughter. The ashamed sister. The one who had learned her lesson. I kept my head down during dinner. I spoke softly. I apologized again whenever my mother brought up the disappointment. And every time I did, my sister looked happier. She started acting even closer to our parents. Helping my mother in the kitchen. Sitting next to my father during dinner. Talking about family trust and honesty. It was almost impressive. The way she slowly painted herself as the perfect daughter while I stood there looking like the family problem. But every night, when everyone went to sleep, I locked my door and looked at the screenshots I had taken from. The moment my father mentioned the lawyer, I saw something change in my sister's eyes. Excitement. She tried to hide it, but I noticed. Her shoulders straightened slightly, and she quickly looked down at her plate so no one would see the smile forming on her lips. She thought the plan was working. To everyone else at the table, I probably looked like the same quiet daughter from the past few days. I nodded slowly and said nothing. But inside my mind, everything was moving very fast. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The lawyer coming to finalize the will meant one thing. My sister believed our parents already trusted her more than me. I thought things were finally calming down. But I was wrong. The next morning at school, I walked into class and felt something strange. People were whispering again. Some students looked at me with curiosity, others with pity. Then my friend Daniel slowly walked up to me. "Hey, is it true what your sister said yesterday?" My heart sank. So the secret hadn't stopped at the house. It had already spread outside. I took a deep breath and asked quietly, "What exactly changed?" The whispers didn't stop. People still talked. Some looked at me like I was a disappointment. Others like I was a story they wanted to hear more about. But strangely, I wasn't scared anymore. When I went home that evening, my sister was sitting in the living room scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. For a moment, I just stood there watching her. The same person who had laughed with me for years was now. After that dinner, the house felt different. Not peaceful. Not normal. Just tense. My sister barely spoke to anyone for the rest of the night. She finished her food quickly and went upstairs without saying a word. But before she left the table, she looked at me. The question felt simple, but the meaning behind it was not. Before I could answer, my sister spoke. "She'll probably be busy," she said lightly. "She has a lot to figure out these days." Her tone sounded polite, but the message was clear. She wanted me out of the room, out of the decision. I slowly looked at her, then back at my father. "I'll be here," I said calmly. For the first time that morning, my sister looked directly at me. And the smile she gave me was cold, because she still believed something, that the story was already written, that I had already lost. But what she didn't know was that the truth was waiting, and this afternoon, everything would change. Would go to her. The house, the savings, everything. For a moment, silence filled the table. Then my father looked directly at me. "Are you going to be home this afternoon?" The question felt simple, but the meaning behind it was not. Before I could answer, my sister spoke. "She'll probably be busy," she said lightly. "She has a lot to figure out these days." Her tone sounded polite, but the message was clear. She wanted me out of the room, out of the decision. I slowly looked at her, then back at my father. "I'll be here," I said calmly. For the first time that morning, my sister looked directly at me. And the smile she gave me was cold, because she still believed something, that the story was already written, that I had already lost. But what she didn't know was that the truth was waiting, and this afternoon, everything would change. By midday, word had spread even further than I expected. People I barely knew approached me with awkward smiles, whispering things I didn't want to hear. I kept my head high, pretending everything was normal. Inside, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief, but no tears came. My sister avoided me, pretending to be busy with her own